been several months since the Supreme Court of the United States overturned Roe versus Wade. So the issue of abortions has come back to the state levels. So no longer nationwide across all states in the United States are abortions legal nationally. I remember the months leading up to this decision. I think most people knew, or at least they thought there was a good chance that it would be overturned. The Supreme Court currently has a majority conservative judges. Also, about a month before the decision was publicly announced, there was a leak. So somebody in the court system, and they still haven't figured out who, I'm surprised this hasn't been investigated. Somebody in the court system, and it couldn't be too many people, it was either one of the Supreme Court judges or just those who were closer to them. Somebody leaked that they were looking into overturning it, and it was pretty crazy. Liberals got extremely angry, and then conservatives were extremely excited and optimistic. Some states even had laws that were not signed. Well, maybe they were signed, but they were not in effect. But they were set up so that as soon as, if the Supreme Court ever overturned the decision, some states already had it set up so that these laws would come into effect immediately, saying, hey, there's going to be certain limitations on abortions. It's probably, I think, about a third of the states had it, roughly. It was a big deal. It is a big deal if you think about it. Abortionists, pro-abortionists will feel that this is what they say. It's going backwards. We've lost over 50 years of progress. And conservatives will say, oh, this is wonderful. We're saving the lives of the unborn. So it was a big deal, and I think leading up to the decision and when the decision was leaked and when it was officially announced, it was a big deal, but it quickly got quiet. I'm not quite sure what happened. And right now, I feel like nothing's really changed. Maybe it's too early to tell. I think it's been about 6 months. A lot of people were predicting that liberal women in conservative states where abortions are harder to come by would be fleeing to liberal states to get an abortion. Maybe not moving, but just, I'm in a conservative state now, I want an abortion, I just go over to maybe next state, get an abortion and come back. I don't hear many stories about that. I'm sure it's going on. I also thought that there would be lots of crackdowns on potentially illegal abortions happening in states that are no longer allowing abortions, or at least place stricter restrictions on them. So, for example, not past a certain date, like 4 weeks, 8 weeks, etc. And I haven't been hearing much news about that. I feel like nothing's really changed. And it's strange because I thought this was going to be historic, something, written in the history books in the future. But nothing's really changed. I'm wondering why. Certainly, there are people in states that are, for example, there are women in states who want an abortion but can't get one. And then the other way around, people who are in states that allow abortions, like a more liberal state, maybe up to birth, but they don't like that. Like, they think it's wrong, and they haven't been protesting or pushing for any changes within their liberal states. Nothing's really been happening. I know there always is, but there were a couple of people arrested around abortion clinics who were holding up signs. So these groups will usually, their Christian organization will usually hold up signs, pray, offer ladies walking into an abortion clinic an alternative, for example, counseling, perhaps adoptions or support. There's a couple of these people who got arrested. I'm not sure if the other side there's been any arrest. I know some, when the decision became official, and probably leading up to it, a lot of Catholic churches were targeted, specifically Catholic. A lot of Catholic churches were vandalized. A lot of Catholic churches had their masses disrupted. So pro-abortionists will come in during the Catholic mass and protest, saying women's rights, reproductive rights, etc. Besides, a few protests going on from pro-abortionists and pro-life people, nothing major's happening. I thought this would be the thing that could potentially really kick off a national disaster, national situation on a national level. But it really has turned out to be nothing, and I'm just really surprised because pro-abortionists, so for some people that's like a single issue, like, hey, that's like the most important thing on the table right now. I'm going to vote for candidates strictly based on where they stand on abortion. And pro-lifers are like, hey, this is a human life. It may not be born yet, but it's a human life. So both sides are, this is not like a small debate like, oh, we're going to tax gas an extra 5 cents. This is not like a little minor thing. This is a very core issue, right? This is a very high value issue. Nothing's really been going on, and I'm just surprised, really surprised. Maybe this country is not as divisive and divided as I once thought. Maybe I've been listening to too much Tim Pool, who's a podcaster who keeps talking about potential civil war or breakup of the country. He sometimes is sarcastic about it, but sometimes he does make some good points that there's some real political violence going on right now. The rhetoric has definitely changed. But yeah, nothing's been going on, and I'm just surprised. I wonder if things will change. People around me are not really talking about it. The funny thing about the churches that got vandalized and got interrupted, they seem to be all Catholic churches. It's funny because it's not, different denominations of Christianity. It's specifically Catholic churches. I believe at least 2, maybe even more, of the conservative judges on the Supreme Court are Catholics. Maybe that has something to do with it. I wonder if Catholic Christians in America tend to be, in general, more conservative. Well, I'm pretty sure that's true compared to Protestants. I'm very sure that's true. So that's just something interesting I noticed. It's specifically the Catholics who are targeted. And it's just funny. I guess that's true. Now that there's at least a few Catholics in the Supreme Court, maybe, if it was all Protestant conservatives on the Supreme Court, the chances of Roe versus Wade getting overturned would be less. So I guess my point is, maybe Catholics are kind of like the new face of the conservative movement. It's not the, what do you call them? Baptist, evangelical Baptist that you always hear about in the news, but I think they are a smaller minority of the Christian population. I'm sure Catholics make up a larger proportion, definitely.